The Old Hunter's Cabin. I'm doing something a bit different. The Old Hunter's Cabin quest is a free tabletop RPG module I've put together. This video is meant to be a guide for any DMs out there that want to run the quest themselves. Hopefully my small animations and editing skills will make the story easier to understand, compared to a regular PDF module. I guess we're about to find out. This module will come with battle maps for each room. You should be able to print these PDFs off with any standard sheet size. I also made a 23-page document with notes on each room. This details the aspects of the adventures, like traps, skill checks, puzzles, hidden rooms, enemy types, story bits, and any kind of variations on anything I just said. This is done up in D&D 5e or 5.5e. You can convert it to something else. I don't usually run any other system, but this is the most common, so I figured I'd be safe. This quest was made for Dungeon Jam 2026, which is a collaboration between a bunch of dungeon tubers, as they say. This is to give back to the community by making 5-room dungeons that could be inserted into any campaign you guys might be running right now. The link to the Dungeon Jam playlist will be at the end of this video, and all the notes and maps will be available via a link in the video description. Let's get into it. Room 1. The Abandoned Cabin, in quotations. This is the start of our adventure. A loud bang rang out, echoing amongst the trees, coming from somewhere deep within the woods. Following this noise, the party sees a rundown structure. The setting of this dungeon is in the woods. This could be anywhere in your campaign. Doesn't matter what forest, what kind of trees, it's not really detailed, or just run it as a one-shot. Ideally, the party gets this abandoned structure one way or another, and that will launch us into our first room. So as the party approaches the cabin, they notice that it's clearly run down and overgrown, though there is an interesting part or aspect of this cabin. These pillars are basically what's creating the magical illusion that is making the cabin look abandoned. Once the party steps past this barrier line, you'll notice that the scene completely changes, and that's when you begin to describe the battle map. So you'll see this in a lot of the other rooms. I've made 2 battle maps, one of them being just a blank slate that you could print off and place on the table, and I have another version that's labeled. That's more for the DM to keep track of everything, know what is what, and keep an eye out for traps or any important parts of the adventure. So this is detailed in my notes document, but there's a number of checks for this area. You'll notice that the pillars themselves will have a couple checks just to tell the party a bit more. This is investigation and arcana, so if you have a wizard in the party, this would be probably a perfect thing to direct them towards. There's some smaller features as well, such as the well, the garden beds, the outhouse. These are all things that aren't necessarily a part of the main adventure, but it's some things that could potentially move things in a different direction, or maybe flesh out the encounter later down the line. Each of these smaller structures will have little bits of investigation, maybe medicine checks. Again, this is all detailed in my notes that you could read through, but this part isn't too important. There's no combat at this stage, just a couple traps to really set the tone of the encounter. So the idea is the hunter knows that he'll have monsters track him back to his home, so he keeps things hidden from monsters and other wanderers, hence the inscribed magical pillars. The whole area is also trapped. Anybody other than the hunter wouldn't know where the traps are, and this is another barrier of defense for the hunter himself. So think of like a survivalist type of person. He's gonna have a lot of hidden areas, vaults, traps for any unsuspecting or potentially hostile people or things. Now, this is all just extra stuff. The party might start piecing it together as you explore the dungeon, or they might skip over all of it. Not a big deal if people don't read into the story too much, but figured I'd tell you that because I worked hard on it. So you can mainly ignore a lot of the outside things if the party isn't really feeling in an explorative mode. Not a big deal. The biggest thing is that you will direct them to the front door of the cabin, which looks like it's been blown open, which will result in another check to determine what blew this door open. Successfully, it will show that a magical entity of some sort blew this door open. Entering the cabin, the party can clearly see that's searched through. You could spend some time in the cabin investigating. Again, there's a lot of other roles that will tell a story. What happened to the hunter, what happened to the intruder. Ultimately, you will guide the party to this door. A storm seems to have blown through the inside of the cabin. Beds, tables, overturned. Cabinet doors ripped off hinges. Dishes smashed on the floor. Dozens of personal items lay ripped, smashed, or scattered. Among the mess, a patch of calm is apparent. A sizable hatch next to the overturned bed. The kitchen and fireplace are all areas that a player might want to check. Not a big deal if the party just skips right through it and goes straight for the hatch. And that will lead us to the next room. Now, before we go to the next room, I'll go back to the detailed map. I have all the gardens labeled. This is mainly just to show that this hunter's been looking after himself. There's a well, of course, for water. If a player does decide to jump down that, you could make that up as you go. One of the later rooms does have an underground river, so maybe you could connect it to that, which could be a funny little bit, but that would skip you directly to room 5. Could provide some interesting flair to the adventure, doing it in reverse. The biggest things about this map is the hatch, of course, and the traps, which I've littered around randomly, but if you weren't actively using this map and making the players move around, potentially falling on a trap, you could just pick a player and make him roll. Just to set the pace. Apologies for the rambling. I'm providing suggestions, anything I could think of that could help a DM run this encounter. Obviously, you could do whatever you want. This is just merely a base, and I'm providing material for quick lookups in the document, just in case you get caught off guard by your players, but feel free to just improvise. Room 2. The Cellar. The cellar is probably the smallest room in the entire dungeon. This is more so a puzzle room and an investigation area. Climbing down the creaking wooden ladder, the party find themselves in a well-organized cellar. The room is lined with cans and jars of all sorts, including a large net of drying herbs. This organization was unfortunately interrupted. The far corner of the room had a handful of broken jars. The contents of the jars were scattered across the floor, with a suspicious streak of liquid scraped away from the bookshelf. So there's 2 key locations. There's the hidden latch, hidden within the bookshelf, and the puzzle bookshelf, which will bring us to the next room. The cellar doesn't have any combat, just hidden items and a puzzle to get to the next room. It'll also maybe give a couple hints of what's to come. The hidden latch, if discovered by the players, will give access to the potion room, as well as a chest of goodies. These are all just items to help out the party. If they miss it, not a big deal, but it's a bit of a reward for players looking around in the room. The biggest part of this room is the puzzle bookshelf. The hunter has hidden the door to the study, or the third room, so the puzzle bookshelf door is different than just a hidden latch. There's 2 main parts. The mess of broken jars will give hints on what's to come and how this door works. There's 3 different levels to it, all building on top of the last, that could kind of give a player a heads up that this door is what they want to go through. Potentially an acid trap with this door in some way, shape, or form. On the highest DC, they will learn a little bit about the enemy that they will soon face. Now, the puzzle itself, if the players try to solve it, that is contained to an engraved book holder that's magically enchanted. 4 books lay inserted into these slots. The book holder can only hold 4 books. An Arcana check will reveal that this is an enchanted book holder, and that it will teleport books back to their original places, presumably on a wrong input. Basically, with these 4 books, they need to be arranged in a certain way to unlock the door and let the players into the next room. And the puzzle's very simple. You just have to spell open with the starting letter of the book titles. Now, for people that don't want to do the puzzle, they might try to force their way through, so I also have stats and the requirements to just break it down. This will activate the remaining acid jars, so any kind of big attack to the bookshelf will set off pressurized acid jars that will require a saving throw and do some acid damage, just to show people that sometimes the aggressive approach, while it will work, will cost you. There's not too much else with this room. You could add more traps if you wanted to, but that's your call as the DM. All that's left is just random storage and bookshelves. Everything else is mainly just rations and other edible goods that the hunter has built up over the years. If you wanted to give the party a couple more items, you could certainly hide some throwing axes or daggers. Room 3. The Study. The Study is another puzzle and lore room. You could certainly add some enemies here if you wanted to challenge your players early, but here is basically a place to learn more about the boss battle and maybe collect a very useful item if they could solve the puzzle. This room has 3 tables on it, each with different information on the creature. There's a chalkboard that the players almost can't miss when they go to the next room, so that's fairly important. There's also a chair with a journal that kind of explains more of the background of the hunter. And there's, of course, the Tetris vault and then the hidden latch door. So inside the study, there's a lot of just general bookshelves around. This is just for flair, but I did insert a table if a player just decided to investigate the surrounding bookshelves. You could basically just pull random stat blocks out of a monster manual. I do have some suggestions here if you just wanted a quick check. Just some key facts to give to players. So similar to the Cellar, this is another hidden latch with the same check. It lets you into a room that's basically an armory of sorts, or the weapons room. There's a couple different weapons that could aid a player in the coming combat. I tried to keep it hunter themed, so there's some silvered weapons and poisoned crossbow bolts. Basically, among these 3 tables and the chalkboard, they will have different parts of the boss stat block. For instance, the Shadow Demon can hide in darkness and dim light settings. Now, players might not investigate all of these areas, all these individual tables, and they might also fail the investigation check, so you could just say, you've looked through the papers, you don't understand the scribblings, and you move on. If a player takes their time going through this room, they will discover every possible weakness that this creature might have. The large table is a bit different. Several books lay open on this long table, all open on sections depicting demons, associated rituals, and herbs. So the largest table has the largest amount of information to give. Each book goes over a different aspect of this adventure. One will tell you the demon's name, which could come in handy for the next part, which is the associated rituals. The hunter's plan was to summon the demon, trap it, and then banish it. So there's 3 circles for summoning, trapping, and banishing. We'll get into this mechanic a bit more, but this table is giving a heads up on that spell. The next part of this table is the special herb, which we did mention in the herb garden, and there might be some drawing in the cellar. But there's a herb that I created called Demon's Bane. Normally in the Shadow Demon stat block, they're immune to poison. So I've came up with a little story herb. We'll say this hunter has discovered a herb that could actually poison demons and bypass that immunity to poison, basically getting rid of a pretty strong immunity. So this allows the hunter to give the creature a poison condition and deal a bit of extra damage. So the chalkboard is arguably the most important investigation check. And I've made it fairly easy. It basically details that the demon is weak to radiant damage and immune to a couple other things. And a very important fact that your players may or may not use is that it can be lured by mortal blood, especially blood of the righteous, which should hopefully be most of your party, or at least one member, because that could come in handy if somebody decides to get creative. So the Tetris vault, it's a puzzle that's, well, self-explanatory. It's Tetris. But rather than the pieces falling down, the pieces are already given. It's basically just inserting it into the grid so that they all fit in with each other. So this is a very important vault. This vault contains the hunter's secret weapon, a blessed longsword. Basically, the blessed longsword item replaces the usual slashing damage of a longsword with radiant damage, which is the perfect weapon against a shadow demon. So with the Tetris puzzle, you could choose to print this out as the DM, or you could just do this on a dry erase board. But basically, the players are free to flip or rotate the tiles. The goal is to fit all the tiles into the grid and fill each grid square. I've ran this a couple times in my other campaigns, and usually the solution will look how you expect it, at least 90%. Sometimes players will take a different avenue and find a different solution, which is fine. There's multiple solutions, and if you really want to spice it up, you could add combat, and basically a player could use their object interaction to interact with the puzzle, place a puzzle piece, and fight an enemy, but depends on how you want to run it. In the chair, there lies a journal. If players decide to read it, they'll find out the hunter's story. The hunter, who is the person that owns this cabin, goes by the name of Henrik. There's a couple notes about his backstory that you can just kind of give your players, and you can fill in more as you need. But it's basically a hunter looking for revenge against this mage cult. And with that, with the study done, and hopefully the players have learned a couple things about the demon, we go to the next room. Room 4. The Spell Room. So the Spell Room is the first major combat encounter of the dungeon. The creak of the door reveals a large stone room, one side carved out, the other a natural cave-like wall. The room is surprisingly barren, save for a cage nestled in the corner, a small table on the wall, and several cultists taken by surprise. Roll initiative. The combat scenario is a group of cultists and cult fanatics, or the spellcaster version of a regular cult member. The only difference from these stat blocks, which are available in the monster manual, these particular cultists have dark vision, so they could see fairly well in the dark. This kind of goes along with the whole shadow demon cult group vibe. So the number of cult members in this room can be tweaked depending on the party you're running and the level, but a baseline is 2 cult mages, preferably in like the farther corner of the room, and we'll just say a d6 plus 1 of regular cult members. This isn't meant to be a hard encounter, just something for the party to warm up against. Inside the spell room, there's the cage. This cage contains the 3 magic circles: the summoning circle, the trapping circle, and banishment circle. Each has its own details. You see the summoning circle has been activated. There's a dull residual magic that can be detected with the detect magic spell, perhaps. The trapping circle seems to have been broken. Looks like somebody has scraped a section away. It looks like the hunter was interrupted halfway through his plan of trying to kill the demon. And finally, there's the banishment circle. Only one of the 4 candles have been lit, and the circle was never activated. So the biggest thing here, whether your players use it or not, the circle could be activated if the party does the following: lure the demon inside the banishment circle, light all 4 candles, and speak the demon's name, Cormanith, and that will banish the demon without having to fight it for too long. Especially if the party was struggling, maybe a player could lure them back to this point and banish it, but it may not go that way. This is more of just an alternate ending. This small table contains a basket of herbs, a small bowl of paste, mortar and pestle, and a jug of water. Upon an investigation check, the party will realize that this is actually Demon's Bane that's already been made into a paste. There's basically enough coating to cover a single large weapon like a greatsword or great axe, or 2 smaller ones like maybe 2 arrows or 2 daggers. And then we go to the next room. Room 5. The Watercut Tunnels. This room is the biggest one yet. The Watercut tunnels can be split up into 2 parts. There is the big chamber at the end, which is where the boss fight will happen, and then the network of tunnels that the party has to go through. The door swings open only partway. A soft thud sounds as the door refuses to move any farther. Glancing at the floor of the new area, you see an unmoving limb of a cultist within a pool of blood. Carefully stepping into the dark cave system entrance, the party sees what felled the dark worshipper: a crossbow bolt through the heart. Following the trajectory, the party is led to the ceiling where the weapon was mounted to the stone. The trap seemed like it was activated by a tripwire on the floor. This tunnel network is a lead up to the big fight. This is going to be run differently depending on what the party does and ultimately what the DM's call is. The party must navigate the hunter's traps and wandering cultists. The tunnels are dark except for the torchlight of wandering cultists that are investigating traps or some different area. While they could see in the dark, it's not perfect, so they will use torchlight to investigate some areas in the tunnels. They don't know that the party is there yet, so they're keeping the torches on up until they get discovered. So, the stealthy approach. If the party chooses to do so, they have to avoid traps and avoid the wandering cultists, or kill them if they're discovered. So this is how the wandering cultist encounter works. While stealthing, the DM will roll a d20 every time the party moves 30 feet. Anything below an 11 will result in an encounter. This encounter will be 1d4 cultists. An odd numbered result of the d20 will mean the cult members will be facing the party. An even number result means that they will be looking away. Alternatively, you could just decide this as a DM. You don't really need to follow this rule, but just a rule of thumb if you're not quite sure. On an even number, this means that the cultists are surprised and they're walking away from the party. Each member can have a surprise attack on the cultist, and they could potentially wipe them all out before they even take a turn and prevent them from running to the lower chamber. Now for the odd number cultist encounter, it's pretty much the same deal, but it's the harder of the two. They will get the surprise round, unless maybe your party thought ahead and was keeping an active lookout, then you could roll a small combat as normal. Another danger about the odd-numbered encounters over the even ones is that it gives the cultists a higher chance of being able to escape. The main goal of all these cultists will be ultimately warning the rest of the cult group. So going loud will turn the whole map into a standard battle map. This will also trigger the boss fight early, so you could just skip to the lower chamber section for this next part. For enemies in the tunnels, if combat starts, you could just then place them around randomly in the tunnels if you haven't already. And a general rule of thumb is a d12 plus 1 of regular cultists and 1d6 plus 1 of the mage fanatic cultists. So if the party successfully navigates the tunnels and wandering cultist encounters, they will get to the lower chamber. The tight tunnels open up into a large chamber of natural rock, which would have been a relief if it wasn't for the scene illuminated by a single torch. An older man dressed in studded leathers dangled midair, his hands clutching near his throat, as if attempting to pull something away. With a sudden snap, the man goes limp and drops near a fallen crossbow on the ground. The dark border of the torchlight shifts and twists as a form steps into the dim light. Long claws extend to strike the torch, scattering the flames to throw the chamber back into darkness. The only thing the party can see is a single pair of glowing red eyes. Now it's time for the boss fight. The hunter has finally been caught by the cultists after being chased by them through his entire compound, and now the shadow demon is on the loose looking for its next prey, which in this case would be the party. So here's the main combat scenario and the enemy strategy. The shadow demon can use darkness of the room to hide after attacks. It will also try to avoid the player with the radiant sword because it knows that will do extra damage to it. If you wanted to spice up the shadow demon, you could also have it kill nearby cultists and take its HP to heal. As established before, the base cultists are fairly weak. Their main goal is to try to block or slow down the players. The cult fanatics are the casters, so they're going to hang back similar to the spell room, and they're going to try to fling spells and maybe hide behind a hallway or something just to stay out of the range of the party. Now, the head cult mage, on top of the regular spells that the cult fanatic has access to, the head cult fanatic will have access to the darkness spell. He will throw a darkness spell in the middle of the shadow demon anytime he's engaged with a player, so that will give the demon an advantage. Everything stays the same if this fight begins in the tunnels, except that the combat will be confined to close quarters. So great weapons would have a disadvantage here. In the case that the demon gets advanced warning, the demon will rush into the tunnels and hold its action around tunnel corners to launch surprise attacks against the players and then run away. So I'm pretty sure I covered everything, but of course, if you plan on running this encounter, look at the document just to make sure that you have a good understanding of it. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the animations. If you've seen anything you liked, please let me know. This is the first time I've made something like this. Any questions, or if you discover a typo, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Good luck and have fun on this one shot. This was a shot in the dark, so good luck. Good luck out there.